the more that I've been around some of the most successful, influential people, I found that they spend their time not in the 5% of what they know. They're seeking information so that
Hmm.
if they can get it, it can ultimately open their eyes to things that they had no idea about. And if you are open to that, if you're open to that concept that, man, there's so much that I don't know, and you're willing to learn, you're willing to be coachable, you're willing to step in and look like a beginner and really take a different approach to things, it's crazy how all of a sudden your body heals, your business starts to grow, your relationships start to flourish, and your families start to repair.
Welcome back to the podcast, and we have a special guest for you today. He is a new friend. His name is Justin Roethlingshoefer. Did I do it? Did I get it right?
Nailed
Say
it.
it for me.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
Roethlingshoefer. Yeah, you nailed it.
Roethlingshoefer. I love it. I love it. That is, I mean, it sounds so prestigious to me. By the way.
I don't know how prestigious it was as a kindergartner trying to figure out how to spell that thing.
Oh dang! I bet I didn't think of that. Yeah, that
I
would be a
always
challenge.
I always say I was the smartest kid in kindergarten because I learned the alphabet before the age of anybody else, but everything just went downhill from there.
So, for those of you that don't know Justin, I just got connected to him this year, and I am in awe of his work and the impact that he is making. So, he is a USA Today bestseller with his new book, The Power of Ownership. He is a keynote speaker, and he's the founder of Own It Coaching. And other than that, I'm really honored to call him a new friend and someone that has very like-minded values and faiths as I do. And so I was so excited for him to be on the podcast. So we're going to dive into so much, but I want to take a minute to do some quick fire questions with you. If people really want to get to know you, I highly, highly encourage everybody to go and pick up your book, The Power of Ownership, which is out now. I read it in a weekend, and it is like my guidebook to my life. So if people like what I am bringing to the world, they're going to absolutely love and be impacted in such a huge way by your book. But tell us a little bit of where you grew up and then where you live now.
Yeah, so I mean that could take a whole podcast. So this
Real
guy,
fast, rapid fire. What do you
born
got?
and born and raised Edmonton, Alberta, Northwest Canada, basically a stone's throw from Alaska, and now I live in Miami, Florida, the complete opposite side of the continent.
Yeah, to Miami. Okay, tell us what you had for breakfast today.
Today I had one boiled egg and an apple.
Whoa, very interesting choice. Okay. So if you were to boil your egg, like how do you do that? Do you like it like kind of soft in the middle, or do you like it where it's like, or did you have a choice? It was just like that was the best option available.
No, I love it hard boiled. Like I love a hard center because
Uh-huh.
I can choose to eat the yolk or not eat the yolk.
Right, that part. Yeah, when it's like that, I usually don't eat the yolk. Okay, and any certain type of favorite apple?
I'm a Granny Smith guy.
Granny Smith. I like that. I like Granny Smith. I'm not big on Red Delicious, but Pink Lady, those are
Pink ladies are good too. And
those are
Envy, ENVY, another great
I
one.
just I just found those actually not too long ago. Okay, so tell us, I'm really big on rituals, and we talk about that a lot on the podcast. And I know we'll dive into more of that as I ask you some more questions because I want to talk a little bit about your book today. But tell us about a typical like morning ritual and why you choose to do those activities in the morning prior to starting your day.
Yeah, it's almost the same every single day, whether it's Saturday, whether it's Monday, whether it's Thursday. So 5:45 wake up call. At 5:45 I'll get up. I'll say a prayer. I'll head out to the gym. I'll get a workout from about 6 to about 7:15. 7:15 I go into the sauna for about 15 minutes. That's my quiet time. From there I'll go into a cold plunge. From there I'll come inside, I'll shower, and then I've got about a half hour where I'll spend it in the Bible before I start my day.
Mm. And what do you find that brings you to your day when you do those things?
Oh man, you know, like I've played around with a lot of things. I've gotten up and gone straight to work. I've gone up and gone straight to the word and gotten quiet. I've done all these things, and finding this order for me what it's allowed me to do is it's allowed me to slow my mind, and it's allowed me to still my heart so that I can ultimately step into this acronym that I have coined called slow is smooth, but smooth is fast. And slow being the acronym silence, stillness, surrender. So even though I'm still moving, even though I'm still working out, even though I'm still in the sauna, I feel like I have silence and stillness in my mind, which puts me
Mm,
in a state of surrender. So now I have the opportunity to listen. And so when I'm in the gym, I don't have music on. If I do, it's quiet worship music, and I'm just getting after it because I love it. We've got a beautiful setup in our backyard. And so it allows me to listen. So silence, stillness, surrender, listen, so that I can become obedient to what is being asked of me, so that I can gain wisdom to receive his will. So slow, that's the acronym: silence, stillness, surrender, listen, obedient, wisdom for his will. And so that's what it allows me to do is when I found my order, it puts me in that state of slow so that I can then step into my day powerfully and be as impactful as possible. Because at the end of the day, the Holy Spirit lives inside of me. My calling that is inside of me is only able to be brought out because this vessel that he's gifted me with is prepared in order to step into what it is that I'm about to embark on that day.
mm. And we could end the podcast right there. But that is so aligned with one of our beliefs, which is really you can only reach your dreams and goals to the level your body can take it. And so often we push down things like taking care of ourselves, sleep, our relationships, and we give everything to achieving success or what society says is success. And that's why I love the work that you do because you talk a lot about designing your own life. And so with your book, The Power of Ownership, why did you really feel called to write this book right now?
Oh man, that's such a good question. To be honest with you, I'll tell you the story. So um, I knew I had a book inside of me. I was sitting with John Gordon, and John, I mean, the guy's written 35 books. I think 80% of them are Wall Street Journal bestsellers. Like it's wild. This guy just turns out a book every single month, it feels like. And he was sitting with me and he goes, you know what, Justin, the way that you talk about health is so different. It's so unique. And even the name of your company, Own It. Like there is a power behind that. There's a power in that, and there's a book in you. And so as I started to think about it, my journey and my story being that, yes, did all my postgraduate doctoral research. Yes, I was in the NHL as a health and performance director. Yes, I did all these things and was in charge of the health and wellness of those athletes. But it wasn't until the last 2 years of my career that I started to realize symptoms. And I'll say these other things just so that you know the picture of like who I was. Had just been
Mhm.
photographed for Men's Health. I had just finished World Championship triathlons. I've been to a couple of CrossFit games. Like was extremely fit on the outside, the picture of health. But I was experiencing these symptoms for the first time that I had no idea what was actually going on. And they found 4 precancerous ulcers in my colon and a precancerous ulcer in my stomach, and said I wouldn't see my 35th birthday. And it was at that moment that I took a look back and saw, man, this isn't an athlete problem I'm solving, but a human problem because we fail to steward the thing. So all the lifestyle that I had been operating on, the pushing, the stress, the continuing to go, the striving, the overcoming, all of these things had started to take a toll because this is ultimately what had earned in some way, shape, or form. And so as I wrote the book about what Own It actually was and what the Own It mentality was, it was 5 days before my editorial deadline. And I went to bed. I just finished the manuscript, 5:30, 5 o'clock that night. I celebrated with my wife. I was like so excited, but I didn't hit submit. I went to bed that night and I woke up in the morning and I had just heard this voice so loud and clear. That's not the book I told you to write. And I was like, nah, like there's no way. I've spent 6 months writing this thing. Like I've got to hand this thing in 4.5 days now. There's no way. And I told my wife about it, and she's like, well, what do you like, lean into that? What do you think? And I said, you know what, I'll give it to the end of the day. If I hear anything or feel anything, I'll just submit it. And away we go. Well, the end of the day came. Didn't have any more clarity. I said, I'll go to bed and I'll wake up. Well, 11, I went to bed. I woke up at 11:45. Same feeling. This isn't the book I told you to write. And I came outside, printed the book off, laid it out on our like island, and all of a sudden it was like a madman, just crossing things out, writing new things in, sticky notes here, there, and everywhere. My wife came out in the morning. There's stuff everywhere. I'm just like, don't open a door, don't turn on a fan, don't do anything because I don't have any of this saved anywhere, and it'll blow everywhere. And 4 hours, or pardon me, 4 days later, the book was completely rewritten. And um, so again, I love to say it's not my voice, it's not my words, but it's God's words. And I think that's why it's just hitting differently for people.
Mhm. That's so powerful. I got chills while you were talking about that. Um, it's interesting. Wrote I started a book last year and I printed it and I put it in a notebook and I did a mock cover and I had all these things ready to go. And it's similar. It's like maybe that was like my ego self. Maybe that was me, but that wasn't the book. And I was pushing so hard and putting so much pressure on myself. And now I'm like, okay, I need to wait. And then we got connected divinely. And it's
Hmm.
so interesting having people mirror back to you, or even you mirroring back to me what you just said.
Yeah.
And I just think it's just such divine timing. Now, going back to what you said about your health and your book, and like why this is such an important book for right now is I don't think I've shared with you, but when I was 25, I was diagnosed with MS. So like part of my face and my head went numb, and I went through all this testing, and I committed because I'm a committed person. I committed to a year to taking this really horrible drug, and I just felt like crap mentally and physically for that year. And after that, I decided that there just had to be a different way. And today I'm 43 and I live symptom free. And I
Amazing.
truly believe because it was the amount of pressure to prove that I was putting on myself, the inconsistent health habits, and all
Yeah.
of that. And you said something in the book that I thought was really profound and I could relate to it so much. And I wrote it down because I want to read it to you. It just really hit home for me. But you said, I regularly found myself under copious amounts of stress that I was never taught to deal with as a leader. I felt compelled to have all the answers, all while trying to do it on my own. And I read those statement that sentence in three parts because regular amounts of stress were never taught to deal with it, even in a leadership position. And we needed to have all the answers, pressure, and then feeling like we had to do it all on our own. How many people that you work with come to you and they feel that way?
Man, every one of them in some way, shape, or form, in some capacity, have that. Whether and here's the crazy part is it's whether they're willing to admit that yet or not. Because
Mhm.
at the end of the day, um, oftentimes when we know we don't feel well, we know there's something not right, even though nothing's broken, we're told that until something breaks, everything's fine.
Mhm.
And that's the narrative that we have to shift, that we have to change, because that's what our medical system's been built off of. It fixes things that are broken really, really well. If you've got an arm facing the other way, or you've got a broken bone, like let's go there. They'll fix it for you. Like that's what it's there for. But in terms of maintaining our health, in terms of preventing illness, it's just not there. And we've given the ownership away to people, influencers, experts, doctors, instead of saying, you know what needs to happen in my life? How do I need to show up differently? Who do I need to become? And what do I need to embody that ultimately allows me to steward this thing in a more powerful way? How do I need to learn the language of my body? I say all the time, communication is the hard work of leadership. And we invest in how do we communicate better with our leaders, with our executive team, with our spouse, with we invest in all of these different types of communication ways, but we never invest in how do we actually communicate with this thing that we embody, that we live in, that ultimately drives every single thing that we do. And that's really what's been our driving force behind this is how can we help empower you, educate you, and equip you to take ownership of your health in a personalized way, no matter the season, no matter what your priorities are, no matter what your experiences have been, so that can be truly a N of one solution, a unique solution, a solution for Carmen that's as unique as a solution for Justin, based off the different types of things that are going on in their life. And it's something that you can do and embody for life. It's not just something that you're in for a couple moments, but something that changes the way you live so that you can live different. But it first starts with people choosing different. Going back to what you talked about, is realizing, hey, I don't have to do this on my own. I don't have to embody this on my own. It's not anybody's fault, but I can start today and I can realize a different outcome.
I love that last part that you said, it's not anybody's fault. Just looking at the information as just information and remembering that it doesn't mean anything about us or our worthiness or our capability or what God has for us. It's just all information. And so that information though, and what you were talking about, um, people may not know what N of one means. I've been
Yeah.
doing those experiments on myself for pretty
Yeah.
much since I had that MS diagnosis because I realized that sometimes traditional medicine didn't actually have the answer for me, but
Yeah.
my body was such a good measure and I could start listening to it. So could you explain N of one? And then can you also talk to us a little bit about heart rate variability, so HRV, and how you use that and how you recommend that to be used? And yeah, tell us a little bit about that because that's so powerful on so many levels.
Yeah, so an N of one solution means it's literally only built for you. It doesn't look the same for anybody else, and it's unique as your fingerprint. And that is how each and every one of us was built. Again, we go back to even Solomon. Solomon, the wisest man in the world, all he ever prayed for was wisdom. And that's what we want to be able to give to each person, is to have wisdom about their body, to be able to hear, see, and understand what's going on. Because a lot of us know what to do, but a lot of us just don't understand what to do. And if
Mhm.
we can bridge that gap and help you actually see what you haven't been able to see, that's when everything changes. And the more that I've been around some of the most successful, influential people, I found that they spend their time not in the 5% of what they know, not in the 5% of what they know they don't know, but they spend it in the 90% of what they don't know. They're seeking information so that
Mhm.
if they can get it, it can ultimately open their eyes to things that they had no idea about. And if you are open to that, if you're open to that concept that, man, there's so much that I don't know, and you're willing to learn, you're willing to be coachable, you're willing to step in and look like a beginner and really take a different approach to things, it's crazy how all of a sudden your body heals, your business starts to grow, your relationships start to flourish, and your families start to repair. Like all of these things start to happen, not because there's any type of magical equation there, but simply because you've gotten your order right and you've become aware of things that you weren't aware of before. I often say, until you have a desire for awareness, you're going to stay exactly where you are. And that's really what we help people do, and which is a great transition into heart rate variability, because HRV is essentially the language of our body, and it's communicating to us how we are adapting to stress and strain. I did my all my postgraduate doctoral work in HRV, and what I ultimately found was it is the most comprehensive, holistic, all-encompassing metric that gives us an understanding as to how well our body is, knowing that mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional stress, our bodies do not know the difference. Its goal is simply to keep us alive. And so, Carmen, if you are in a fight with your spouse, if you're trying to figure out how to deal with a teenage child, if you're trying to get a really big workout in, if you're going for a long run, or if you're trying to figure out how to plan this big event you have coming up in the fall and all of these back to back to back meetings, your body doesn't know the difference between any of those stressors, any of those inputs, and the output will always be the same: a release of cortisol, a release of adrenaline, and a release of norepinephrine to protect you and to keep you alive. That is your body's and your nervous system, your brain, basically your
Mhm.
main goal. And so HRV is a measure of how balanced or how the rhythm of overreaching, seeking stress, and regeneration, recovery, how that rhythm is actually optimized in your life. If it's a great rhythm and it's something that's working really well, you're going to have a higher HRV, a higher variability. If you have a lower number, it's simply an indication and an alert that you are overreaching more than you should be. And thus, there's chronic stress going on internally. And when you live in that state over the course of many, many years, just simply unaware of how you're living, what happens is you start to age faster you start to age faster biologically inside versus
Mhm.
chronologically how many birthdays you have. So oftentimes what I see is I see 40, 50-year-olds coming to us who have been business owners, who have had major impactful seasons of their lives, who have helped influence thousands of people, who have been on a mission for so long about what they wanted to do. And yet they're completely oblivious that internally, their biological health is actually 20 to 30 years older than what it
Wow.
is that they're actually living, which is why we're seeing the incidence of chronic illness be the leading cause of death in the United States at 71%. And so a part of our goal and our mission is to take that incidence of chronic illness at 71% and drop it to less than 50% by the year of 2035 by educating, empowering, and equipping people to live life differently and having metrics, not opinions, not thoughts, not emotions, but rather metrics that are unique to you that help you see something and know something that you didn't know before that can help create change that's sustainable, long lasting, and personalized.
I love that sentiment that runs through your book is like the guidebook for people to try things out and see what works for them and then consistently do the things that work for them to design a life
Mm,
that they love, to design a life that they want to live versus the one that's put out there for them by society or the world or all of these standards. And
yeah.
so, but getting the information is the most important part, the right information, because there's so much wrong information out there. You probably know the fact better than I do, but the bazillion, I don't even know if that's a word, right? Bazillions of dollars that is spent on marketing to us to fix us when inherently we're not broken. We just need to make different choices, like what you were talking about. There's things that we can do to feel better. Most of the people that I've worked with in my career is they'll come to me and maybe they just start one small thing, a morning routine. They start eating better. They start walking, whatever it is, they start being more mindful. Then they're like, I don't really know what it is, but I just feel so much better. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, you just settled for feeling like crap like everybody else. And that's the society standard instead of feeling good. And so I love that you talked about that. Now, something that you mentioned as you were explaining that to us was this idea of overreaching, which is like when I think about it, is like all the pressure that I would put on myself and never celebrating achieving a goal, but just like going for the next thing. Nothing was ever good enough. And
Mhm.
then also this idea of regeneration. But in the book, you also mentioned something that I found was really interesting. Last year, I was doing some talks, and one of the things I would talk about is comfort and how comfort is really killing our calling. Comfort is actually more like discomfort, but we're just comfortable with that. And you said that sometimes we can be out of rhythm, not because we're so overreaching, but because we have an aggressive pursuit of comfort.
That's a good one.
And
And
tell me about that.
yeah, so when we think of the aggressive pursuit of comfort, um, what we end up doing in our world and when in our society is we try to shy away from everything that's going to help us grow. And I'm going to use a word here. We talk about intention a lot, right? Intentionality and how can we be intentional? Oftentimes people hear the word, "What's your intention?" And they're like, "Oh, well, I'm going to have the intention to be more happy. I'm going to be the intention to wake up earlier. I'm going to have the intention to be more present." Those are all fantastic. But if you actually listen and go to the root word of like how intention was actually built, in tension, you're meant to be in tension. It's supposed to actually like you should
Mhm.
feel something in your soul. You should feel something jump when you go into something of intentionality. You should almost feel a little bit defensive about what it is that you're having your intention in. Why? Just like a muscle, you want to grow it, you got to put it under tension. So just like us, we have to be in tension if we want to grow, and you have to become somebody new. And every habit and behavior that you have is simply a vote of who you want to become in the future. And so when you think about this, there's this x-axis as to who you are, and then there's another axis as to who you're trying to become. And this middle intersection point right here is that intention point. And when you feel it, you know it, because you maybe get defensive, you maybe get frustrated, you maybe go like, oh my gosh, that's not me. But if you actually get honest, that's exactly where you need to live. And that's exactly where you need to know. So the aggressive pursuit of comfort is keeping granny in the air conditioning all year long, and not having her pick up the groceries because she might throw her back out. But yet alone, all this time she's losing muscle mass, she's sitting on osteoporosis, she has no capacity to do anything. And now all of a sudden she tries to walk up the stairs, she falls over, breaks her hip, and then a year later she's no longer with us. That is what this looks like in the aggressive pursuit of comfort. We live in a culture that continues to want to keep us here, because any type of tension we shy away from. Yet alone, little do we know that intention is where we grow. Now, do not be confused. Do not be confused. And I'll tell you this story as well. Do not be confused about the with the David Goggins mentality of go, 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 grind, grind, grind. If you don't push, 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 you're not worth anything. Because that's what I fell into for a long time. And I've told this story before, where in 2021, I had gone through this whole journey of like getting myself well, stepping away from the NHL, starting our business, starting our company. And I opened up my phone one day, and David Goggins is sitting there going, if you don't run every day, if you don't do hard things, you're not a man. You're not worth anything. And not literally in that language, but that's what was yelling in my face. And I was like, screw you, David Goggins. I'm a man. Like, watch me. Like, my whole life, I've dealt with the I'm good enough, I'm worth it, these types of things. And so right there on the spot, I went to social media and I said, for the next 90 days, I'm going to run 2 miles every single day. Every single day, I'm going to run 2 miles a day. Why? Because I'm going to do hard things, whether it's raining, whether it's storming, whether it's cold, whether I'm traveling, whether I haven't had any sleep. I don't care. I'm doing it on top of everything else I'm doing, because I'm a man and I'm good enough and I'm going to show you. Well, on day 90, I'm running my same loop. I'm coming home about a mile and a half in. I get this like feeling in my gut, and I hear your win is not finishing. And I'm like, how does that make any sense? That's just like a thing to go like, oh, I didn't finish. I'm a martyr. And so I kept running, I kept running. And then all of a sudden I had like this emotional overwhelm where I just started to cry. And I heard the voice again. It goes, you are worthy just as you are. You are good enough just as you are. Your win is not finishing. And I just started to weep. And I sat down. It's about 400 meters from the door. I sat down. I called an Uber. They came, they picked me up. They drove me the 400 meters. So I couldn't actually finish. And that's where it came back to, is knowing that you are good enough, knowing that you are worthy of living differently. You are worthy. You don't have to prove anything to anybody. You don't have to take the ways of the world in order to actually feel that and actually accept that. And so when we come back to this aggressive pursuit of comfort, it's what is the tension? What's the tension point that you have to intentionally choose, purposefully choose, N of one solution for Carmen, choose that you know is holding you back from who you have to become. That doesn't mean you have to take a cold plunge every day. Maybe for you, it's actually just getting up at 5:45 every single day. You don't have to just get up at 5:45 every single day. Maybe that's not for you. Maybe it's just that you have to give yourself 15 minutes of self-care time every day. Maybe that's the tension point that you have to deal with and that you have to go into, that ultimately HRV will show you is going to ultimately reflect you in a direction and validate that the decisions you're making that are different is what's ultimately going to open the door to go where you want to be and where God's ultimately called you to go. But in order to get there, you have to do something different, because if you're unwilling to do something different, the doors won't open. You're not able to open a door. You're going to continue to open doors and you're going to struggle. You're going to continue to try to drive them open. But hell or high water is not going to open those for you, because they weren't meant for you. And so to go where others can't, you have to do what others won't. And that's the tension point that we have to sit in.
Hmm. Tension for some people is just like silence.
Totally.
And you mentioned that was self-care.
Yep.
I'm just taking a little moment here because what you just said was so powerful. In fact, I really want to encourage everyone to rewind those last few minutes and listen to that again and understand what that means for you. You said maybe that tension is 15 minutes of self care. Now, for someone that's a doer like me, an achiever, and that was always reaching for the next thing in order to validate my worth, not understanding that I am beautifully and wonderfully made and I am worthy just as I am, not always understanding that, then sitting with myself, that was hard. And it was hard because I was sort of scared of what I was going to uncover, just being by myself. Now I love to be by myself, and I love to meet new people, and I love to be in silence, and I love to be with my thoughts and with God, but it wasn't always like that. So the tension is so important. And people can start small. One of the things I think about is this personal thing that I always do. Travel. I know you travel a lot. You're on the road speaking often, meeting with clients. And it's my commitment to myself that no matter what, even if my backpack for whatever reason is weighing 50 pounds, which it should not, but sometimes it gets heavy because I realize stuff, but I'm going to take the stairs, that I don't take the escalator, that I take the stairs. And if for some reason there is no stairs, then I am going to try and do whatever I can to take the stairs, make the escalator the stairs, right? But that's just a small amount of tension and pressure for myself, but in a good way. It's
I-
like this is what I'm going to do to get in these few extra steps because I'm sitting down a lot today.
It's so funny you say that because I was doing a talk the other day and I literally said, because I do the same thing. And I just every time I do it, I look to the person to my left and I say, "Leaders take the stairs. Leaders take the stairs." And as everyone's on the escalator,
Don't either. I might have
and
to do that.
leaders take the stairs. And I posted this on Instagram, and then I said it during the talk. I said, it's not that taking the stairs makes you a leader, but the mentality to only take the stairs that does."
Mm, mm,
Just let that sit for a second. There's nothing special about taking the stairs. It's the mentality
mhm.
that brings you to the point of not taking the escalator, not taking the elevator, but taking the stairs wherever it is that you go that does. It's that aspect.
And you never know who's watching. And so my husband, he's always like would always be like rushing at the airport, even though we have plenty of time. It's my goal in life to not rush. And so I don't book things where I have to rush. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic. But he would still take the escalator sometimes, and you never know who's watching because guess who only takes the stairs with me now? He
Your
does.
husband. Yep.
Yeah, we both take the stairs now. It's almost like unspoken. We're taking the stairs. When we happen to drive here in Miami Beach to go to the grocery store, there's an elevator, but we take the stairs. Um, yeah, yeah, taking the stairs. Um, Something you said earlier. So I was watching your Instagram stories earlier as I was preparing for our talk today, and you talked about persistence, and you talked about getting no's.
You're really up to date.
I right. Yeah. I just for me, it again, I really believe God brings people to you that are like mirrors that are showing you. So I am in a season of no. It is my era of no right now.
Yeah.
And I could be lessening my standards. I could be um not being in alignment with where I'm being called to go, or I could be keep being persistent and be okay with the no's and know the right yeses are coming. Can you talk to us a little bit about like that side of your business and what you do there and how you deal with the no's?
Yeah. I literally have been processing this for a while because we get emotional. But even in my newsletter today, coming back on the plane, I just wrote a big thing on this. And I live in a world of rejection. I've lived in a world of rejection my entire life, where at once it was athletics, it was you weren't fast enough, you weren't big enough, you weren't strong enough. Hey, we love everything you do, but we're going to trade you. Hey, we're going to cut you. And I just never took that for an answer. I just knew that I was a hockey player. That's what I did. That's what brought me to the States. That's what paid for my schooling. That's what did all of these things. And um, I'll start with this story before I go into the most recent story. But when I left the NHL in 2020, in 2021, I released my fourth book. I thought this was going to be what launched me into God's calling. I obediently stepped away in 2020. It's not to serve the audience He wanted me to, not the audience that I wanted to. Um, and I take out downtown uh, Lululemon headquarters in New York City and invite 200 plus people. I think 35 RSVP yes. There was about another 40 that were maybe. Had the tables all set up, had food in the back, had it catered, had a videographer, had a photographer, had a couple sponsors come in. And 7:30 or pardon me, 7 o'clock we were starting. 6:30 rolls around, 6:45, 7:15. There's nobody there. Not one person, like zero. And at 7:30, I look at the videographer. I'm like, hey, I guess it's time to go. And he's like, go where? I said, it's the start. He's like, there's nobody here. I said, I don't care. We're gonna do this. And so I've got tears in my eyes. I got a brick in my stomach. I feel like a failure. I feel embarrassed. It's this like what am I doing? Like literally, what am I doing? I went, I delivered this thing. At the end, I looked at him and I said, there will be a day where this book is a bestseller and the room is full. And he said, okay, kid, can I go home now? And I said, yes, you can go. And I tell that story because that was only 4 years ago. That was only 4 years ago. And today, I've got a USA Today best-selling book. I speak on stages all around the country that are packed, but it's not because I'm any different than you. It's just because I got up one more time. It's just because I had that level of persistence. And just because that has ultimately found me to where I am today, that doesn't mean that I don't get no's. I get told no 10 times a week. I get told no every single day, and not just by my wife. It's like it's in every facet of my life. And if you're not okay hearing no, you're never going to amount to what it is that God's called you to, because a no is, or a rejection is, simply protection. And it's only protection if you're willing to reflect, is what is actually going on, what's actually happened. And the literally what I was talking about this morning was there was a stage that was going to put me in front of about 1,000 people, all people who had at least 40 to 50 business owners under their tutelage that ultimately I could speak into. And that's a big opportunity, because you go to
Mhm.
speak to a room of 1,000 of those people, it's probably going to spin off another couple hundred stages throughout the next couple of years. And it was a big opportunity. And I tried to communicate with them for about 4 to 5 months, and they put deadlines on and they continually missed their deadlines of when they were getting back to me. So I'd reach back out and say, hey, where are we at? How's this going? Do I need to change something? Do I need to shift something? How can I serve you better? Is there budgetary issues? Can I switch? Can I do something? And all of a sudden I got on a phone call with one of them. Four were supposed to be there. One showed up, and it was an amazing phone call. And then the person who didn't show up sends me an email and says, hey, we're not going to actually bring you in. And to be honest with you, it's because of your level of pressure and persistence that entrepreneurs don't like. And I thought it was so ironic, because entrepreneurs are literally taught the way in which you succeed is continuing to pursue, continuing to go forward, continuing to be persistent in what it is that you've been called to do. And I just shared that message this morning that no matter how many no's you get, no matter how many rejections you get, they're not rejecting you. Simply what's happening is they don't like what they see potentially in you, because it's something that they are jealous of. It's something that they're wanting. It's something they're desiring. And at the end of the day, if you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I have stuck and been obedient, I've stuck and been patient, I've stuck and been intentional, and I've stuck and been consistent, you've done your job. Your job is obedience. God's job is outcomes. And at the end of the day, if the door has been closed, it wasn't meant for you anyways, and it's simply protection. So now you have to go reflect on, where do you go next?
Mm. Thank you for that. I think my no count this week is 3. So, and I 100% agree with that. I also think that there are sometimes signs that we're not paying attention to, that maybe it's something that's not meant for us, and that's something to think about as well.
Yeah,
Do you think about that with that opportunity?
often. I think about that often. And what I mean by that is in the sense of, even though we have the best level of intentions, oftentimes we can still slide into this worldly component of what's actually there for us versus where you're actually supposed to be.
Mhm.
And even though I'm extremely intentional with my morning routine and being silent and being still, and I'm going to say that word intentional for a reason because a lot of people look back on me and say, "Oh, well, he's got it. It's easy." I don't want to get up and do that every single day at 5:45. I don't want to go and sit in the silence every single day. I don't want to go and do that. Some days I just want to go and get to work because that is where I can hide. If I'm being completely honest,
That
that
part.
that is where I can go and hide. That is where I can go and be validated. That is where I can go and do something that creates something that somebody else can comment or like or do something in that realm. But instead, I sit in the tension because it's at that moment that I can realize something new. I can go and I can see something else and I can check my heart posture. I can check where I'm going because so often I take it for granted of how well I think I hear God talk to me is even though I'm listening, if I'm not solely focused on the direction in which he's calling me, man, it is so easy to miss out on that. It is so easy to take what it is that you want and disguise it as what he wants. And if you're not honest with yourself, if you can't sit in the disruption, if you can't sit in the tension, if you can't sit and be honest, you're going to constantly be chasing a lie. And that it because I've done it. I've done it. That is what I call like my ultimate failure. My time in the NHL, it was amazing. It was awesome. I loved it. But at the same time, I call it my ultimate failure, success without fulfillment. Like
Mm.
it was like the stealer of joy. You had everything going for you. Everything was great. Everything was positive, but I was miserable. And many aspects of my life were in disarray, including my health, which ultimately came to that consequence, which is why this mission is so close to my heart because I've lived that life. I've ran those in those shoes. And the moment I traded my shoes for these ones that are blessed by the kingdom, I don't want another pair of shoes. I don't want to go in another direction because um, I say this is the outcome that you desire and the outcome you don't desire. Both outcomes are inevitable. You're going to get one of them. But which one do you want? Based upon your level of consistency, your level of intentionality, your level of obedience, and your level of patience will determine whether you go left or right. The outcome
Mhm.
is inevitable, but whether it's what you want, let me change that. Whether it's what you desire or whether it's what you don't desire is simply dependent on what you choose.
Mm. So powerful. You said it's easy for me to skip all my morning rituals and go to work because that's where I can hide. I want everybody to hear that, especially if you're listening to this podcast because you're a high achiever, you're a go getter, and we all want to be successful. One of the last podcasts that I did was on measurements of success. And it wasn't a number and it wasn't a number of likes. It was measurements of success. Like, do I wake up each day with energy and enthusiasm? Do I hear from and spend time with God? Do I make my relationship with my husband a priority? Can I wear whatever I want? And this is kind of, whatever I want whenever I want in my closet, right? But that just means that I'm taking care of myself. These are measures of success and having people look at success differently. Because what you said was when you get a no, it's protection, but it's also redirection to the thing that's
That's
going to
good.
be even better than you could ever imagine or dream. And I
Yep.
always remind myself it's always, always going to be this or something better. And within this, there's something here for me. Maybe there's more preparation or positioning, or maybe this just wasn't it. And I was trying to control this and I need to let go, like what you were saying. Um,
Can I add something to that because it's
Please.
just like heavy is
Yeah.
I think often we forget that we live in a world in which abundance is literally our birthright.
Mm,
Abundance is our birthright. Whatever it is that God's promised, he's never broken a promise. All that's happened is we've walked away from the path that was ultimately designed and designated for us. And if you realize that you can't fail, no matter how scary, no matter how difficult, no matter how hard, but simply are open and willing to listen, willing to be still, be obedient, and step into it, you cannot lose. Like the power in that, you cannot lose. And it's not
Mhm.
going to be easy,
Mhm.
but the process is very simple. And along that journey, you're going to be tested, because a calling that isn't tested is a calling that can't be trusted. And if the more that you lean into this and you take these knowing that, hey, I'm going the right direction, and you can take a look in the mirror and say, am I intentional? Am I consistent? Am I obedient? And am I ultimately being patient for what it is that's coming my way? The outcome is inevitable. You win in the end.
Mhm. I was looking at something today from James Clear, and he was talking about patience means that you're still taking action, but, like, not controlling the outcome. But patience is not just waiting
Totally. 100%.
without action. I botched the quote, but it really hit home with me, in that you're still taking action even though you're patiently waiting. Could you a couple more questions as we kinda wrap up with you, and this has just been so jam-packed full of impactful nuggets for everyone listening, and I thank you. Again, make sure to go and get Justin's book, The Power of Ownership. The link will be in the show notes, and we'll probably do a giveaway. I'm thinking we'll do a giveaway. So if people comment, their biggest takeaway from this episode, we'll pick 2 people, we'll give away 2 of your books. Tag us
So
both
good.
so we can make sure and share it after this podcast is released. But tell us a little bit about this idea of designing your life. And you define design as a plan, system, and process that's created for a specific purpose. But you also talked about your priority, I think priority tree. Is that
Yeah.
what, did I get that right? Can you
Yep.
share a little bit about how that kind of helps you make decisions within your life and choices?
Yeah. So when I think about priorities, a lot of people think that when they have a certain priority, that means they have to give something up. They have to completely eliminate it from their life. And I don't equate priority to time spent. So when my priorities were out of order, I have five: God first, myself second, my wife third, my friends and family fourth, my business fifth. And people are like, oh, yeah, it's so easy to say that your business is fifth, but it doesn't mean time spent. I easily spend the most time on my business. But here's what I'm talking about: time with God goes on first. Nothing replaces Sunday church. Nothing replaces my Monday night men's group. Nothing replaces my Bible time after I'm training. Then myself next. Before, when I was unhealthy, myself was placed in ego, as what does this look like to bolster Justin, but rather know, what does this look like now to actually steward the vessel in which I live in. So nothing takes the place of my morning routine. Nothing takes the place of my sauna. Nothing takes the place of my afternoon walk. Nothing takes the place of my silent time before I go in for dinner. Then my wife. Nothing takes the place of date night. Nothing takes the place of our family dinners at night. Nothing takes the place of our weekend together twice a quarter, or pardon me, once a quarter. Nothing takes the place of our 10 days completely off the grid every 6 months. So like, these things go on the calendar. Friends and family. Nothing takes the place of my Monday morning calls with my mom. Nothing takes the place of my Monday or Friday morning calls with my dad. Nothing takes the place of my Wednesday afternoon calls with a friend. And then guess what? At the end of the day, there's still room for 10 to 12 hours if I actually need to work. There's still
Right.
room, but it's energized, it's purposeful, it's actionable. It's all of these things where I'm now living in it, because it's built by design. It's built based off a priority tree that has been intentionally, purposefully, and intentionally done.
Mm, that's so powerful. I second that, though, that I have a similar priority tree. And it also helps me in making those tough decisions. Um, for example, my husband's cousin passed away a couple of years ago, and he was like a brother to him. And I had planned an event in Colorado Springs. I was doing a podcast tour at the time, and I had sold tickets. It was gonna mean that I would be able to fly in just in time for the funeral, but that just didn't feel right, and I sat with that for a while, and I made the decision to cancel the podcast tour and refund everybody's tickets, even
Wow.
though people were upset, so that I could be with my husband and with family in order to support him during this difficult time. Old me, though, would have said, "Well, I can still make it to the funeral," but that wasn't right based on what I say my priorities are. Am I actually living them?
So good. So good. Like, how are you
Um,
holding yourself accountable? Like, what does that look like?
mhm, mhm. Yeah. So one of the things that I always say is join me in being the one to show the world how truly great life can be. And you are a true testament to that. You are one of those people that are showing the world how great life can be. And you're doing that through example. You're doing that through teaching, through leading, through your book, through your writing, through your speaking, through your coaching. Um, One of the quotes that you quoted in your book was John Maxwell that said, "Long-term consistency beats short-term intensity every single time." And you've talked about that over and over again, this idea of figuring out what works for you by getting some help, getting some information, not making it good or bad, black or white, but just getting the information and then designing and building a life, that you truly love. I know when I started doing that, things really changed for me. And one of the things I started doing, and I was sharing with you before we started of how we actually were connected.
Yeah.
And it actually goes back to I invested in myself in a mastermind in 2018. It was one of the first larger investments that I had done in myself in coaching for myself, which was really a catalyst to growth, both personally and professionally. And I was able to speak in Virginia Beach at one of my mastermind um, colleagues, events, and I met a woman there, and her name's Tamara Andres, and she connected me to you just this year. So if I wouldn't have made that investment in myself, if I wouldn't have gotten in the room with other people for the mastermind to speak at the event, you and I would never be connected. And I know you're in rooms all the time with people. You mentioned being around successful people and learning about what successful people do. Can you tell us a little bit about like what you think about the power of being in the room with other thought leaders and change makers and learning and growing?
Yeah, I always say that it's show up and see what happens, because
Mm,
at the end of the day, you have to be in the room. You go back, I mean, I always go back to like scripture, like that's truth to me. And
mhm,
miracles didn't happen in a closet. They happened when you showed up. They happened when you were in a gathering. They happened when you were in a room. They happened when you were there. And so that's where you have to go. That's where you have to be. If you don't invest in yourself, why should anybody else? And I mean, I feel this every single day, and I feel this so heavy is I no longer want people to have to suffer when it comes to their health. I want people to thrive. And that is how we were built. It's a contrarian opinion that I have. It's a contrarian statement I make is either you earn your health or you earn your illness. But at the end of the day, you have to make a choice as to what you are going to do. And so no matter how much I want to help somebody and how much I want to get them on the other side of it, I can lead them to the water. But if they get there and they're like, oh, you know what? I forgot my glass. I need to go get it before I can take a drink, or I have to build my straw before I can take a sip. Like, no, just put your head in and go. I've been in so many rooms. I step into those rooms with giants, and I'm like, man, I don't belong here. I I I can't even carry these people's briefcase. But then at the end of the day, you end up being able to be a blessing to these people in some way, shape, or form. At the
mm,
end of the day, you make a connection that ultimately walks you into the room. I'll give you a perfect example of this. Was invited to go on a dinner cruise that was basically a pitch to go into a mastermind. My wife and I flew from Miami to Orange County. We basically said we flew out there for dinner because we flew out there that afternoon. We went to dinner. We flew back the next morning. We sat at a table with Catherine Gordon, John Gordon's wife. We had a great connection. It was amazing. We met Ed Milet there. Just a lot of these big names. Pete Vargas had held it. Well, fast forward. That was 2.5 years ago. Fast forward, focused on building these relationships, really making sure that they were harnessed well. Well, fast forward, John Gordon is the one that basically walked me in the door at Wiley and got me a book deal, was the one that prompted me and pulled the Power of Ownership book out of me that is now the USA Today best-selling book that's now impacting thousands of people. Fast forward, Pete Vargas is now has me living at his home. That's where I flew from Colorado Springs, has me living in his home 1 week out of every single month, taking him on this health journey that over the last year he's transformed and lost about 100 plus pounds so that he can steward his vessel in a different way. These are all the things that happened simply by going to Orange County for dinner. And
Mm.
until you invest in yourself, why should anybody else? If we honor an intentional God, why wouldn't you live intentionally?
That is just so powerful, and 100% the reason that we're putting on our conference this year, the Amplify Your Life World Conference. So, little plug, if you haven't grabbed your ticket yet, click the link in the show notes.
Be
But
there. You don't want to miss it. There may be some surprises.
yeah, I think there might be some surprises that everybody wants to know about. Um, I am just so honored that we are connected, that we had you on the podcast today, that we've had multiple conversations. I have to tell one last story about our relationship. I had set up our first appointment with Justin and I was so excited. And this was a day that I was deeply discouraged this year. So God has put a lot of new things on my heart. And when you're pressing into those new things and being uncomfortable so much, there are moments when discouragement or doubt happens. And it was one of those days. And I just had to take a break and I took the
I don't think we had
afternoon.
even met yet.
We had not even met yet. And I no showed to our appointment. Now, if anybody knows me, this is not me. This is not my character. This is not what I do. But I knew in that moment there was no way I could show up as my best for anything that I had planned for the afternoon. And you know what Justin does? He sends me an email after I'm vulnerable and honest, which is a new thing for me over the last few years, being able to just be completely transparent, and said, I was deeply discouraged. I'm doing a lot of new things in comfortable spaces, and I just needed to step away. And what did you send me back?
I'm gonna
Do
try
you
to pull up
remember?
I'm gonna try to pull up the email. I know I think I prayed for you in the email and but I'll pull it up and read it if you want me to.
Yeah, that would be great. So he sends me the kindest email that filled my heart, that filled my spirit. And that's when you know that you're connected to the right people. But I'm just going back to, if you don't put yourself in situations that are uncomfortable, if you don't put yourself around people, if you stay in the same spot that you're always in, you're always going to get the same thing that you've always gotten. And I was so thankful on that day when I read that email, that prayer in that email. That was exactly what I needed that I didn't know that I needed. And I wouldn't have received it if I wasn't completely transparent, just saying, "This day is not going well for me."
It's so good. So good. Um yeah, so I'll read it here if you're good.
Please, let's go. Let's read it. Let's share it.
So you had said, wow, I'm so sorry. Please accept my deepest apologies for missing our time together. Um, Full transparency, I had a moment of deep discouragement and stepped away from my computer, phone, and work. God assumed him great work inside of me and stretching me and growing me like I never thought possible. And I said, hey, Carmen, not a problem at all. As I sit here writing this email in the middle of the mountains, watching the beautiful sunrise, I have a word for you that I'd love to share. I don't know where your discouragement comes from, but I can only imagine. It's 2nd Deuteronomy 31:8. It is the Lord who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Do not fear or be dismayed. The Lord has prepared you for great things, things that are larger than your prayers. And in fact, you're praying for a can't, or what, or, and in fact, even what you're praying for can't hold a candle to what you're called for. However, what you are praying for, you are not yet prepared for. So the work the Lord is doing in you is ultimately for you and all in preparation for what's waiting for you. Trust that, sit in that. His promise lies in you and he speaks to you through your imagination and creativity. That's a gift from God, so trust it. Allow the work to happen, surrender to the peace and to the moves he's making along the way. We on earth are trying to play checkers, no matter how smart we think we are, where he's playing chess. Trust that work as he's already gone before you, cleared the path and made the way. Lean in and allow him to lead you and allow him to lead you down it. He will never leave you, he'll never forsake you, but he's going to be with you as you push through to the other side. Stay in the tension. There are people waiting for your calling, and he knows that. No matter how slow or how confusing, trust it because the interference we provide simply causes the Lord to find other detours to the ultimate destination. I've walked in those shoes and still do many days, and leaning on that promise always brings me back. On that note, here's my calendar. Let's find another time to book.
And I know that that word and that message Someone else needed that today. And that's why I was prompted to tell that story. And you were able to find that email and share it. And I am deeply, deeply grateful for, at the end of the book, you give an invitation for everyone. Do you have an invitation for everyone or a last message that you'd like to share?
I just have this again. I just feel this so deeply is people out there feel like they're broken. They're looking for a solution. How do I fix this thing? There's no fix for what you're looking for because you're not broken. You're not broken. Like hear that. And so whatever it is that you're going through, whatever it is that you're feeling, wherever it is that you feel like you're the bottom of the barrel, there may still be a further down. There still may you still may have not hit ground floor. But guess what? You're not going to break along the way. But all these things that you're going through are simply there so that God can ask you and prompt you and invite you to make a different decision. And until you make a different decision, it means that you still think you're strong enough to handle what God's supposed to take.
Hmm. Thank you. Thank you for being the one. You are truly a picture of being the one to show the world how great life truly is. And it starts with those choices. And it's okay sometimes if we need to reach out for help. In fact, we should all be reaching out for help if we need it. So
Amen.
I know that we got so much from this podcast. I can't wait to go back and listen to it and listen to my favorite parts. And again, we're going to be giving away a couple copies of Justin's book. So tag us on Instagram. And what is your Instagram handle, just to share with everyone?
At Justin Roeth, at Justin Roth.
Okay,
Made it
perfect.
simple.
Yeah, made it simple for sure. And then we'll put everything else in the show notes. So thank you so much for being with us today, Justin. We appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Carmen.